Yeah, so here's Solomon and I'm Xavier, and we are the hosts of today's webinar. And we have been organizing online events since the pandemic has been spread out worldwide, and we all have to adopt to different way to work. And to make sure that we stay connected, we are organizing online events and invite speakers from the leather and fashion industry to share their viewpoints with you. So please stay tuned on our website and social media platform for the updates. And this webinar will be recorded and posted on YouTube. If you are enjoying the webinar, please share to your friends, partners, and colleagues.
Yeah, during the webinar, please feel free to chat with us in the chat box. And if you have any question during the webinar, please type in the Q&A boxes. You can find the box at the bottom of the screen. And toward the end, we will ask you to complete the survey. And you can find the survey after exiting the webinar. And please take a minute to fill this out because it's very important for us to improve our webinar in the future.
So today, we have a great honor to have Dr. Dietrich, the Vice President of Lenses, to be the speaker. Dr. Dietrich is responsible for the global clustering development and the leather industry relations. And he is a chemist who started his career with experience in process development and R&D management. He has served the leather business for more than 15 years. He is also an executive committee member in the leather working group. So let's welcome Dr. Dietrich. Hi, Dr. Dietrich.
Hello?
Hello, yeah, we see you.
You can't see me?
I can see you and I hear
okay,
you now. Yeah, so let's...
And you can see my screen?
Yes, you can start to share your presentations. Yes, the green button in below.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay?
Yes, it's loading. Yes, we can see it now. So we over the stage to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is my second webinar. I try to do my best, and yeah, thanks for the introduction. I was asked to talk about sustainability aspects of the material leather. Well, I would ask the question first: leather and sustainability, is it a contradiction? I will go through 6 different aspects: the raw material origin, chemicals to produce leather, the water which was used in the leather process, the byproducts which are coming out of the leather process, the carbon footprint, and the biodegradability. All issues and solutions the leather industry has implemented, and then I will evaluate if this is sustainable or not. Let me start to draw attention to the basic raw material of leather, the collagen. Collagen is a protein naturally produced out of 3 raw materials: air, water, and sunlight. I guess everyone knows the process is called photosynthesis, and it is the start of a circular process flow, as you can see on the left side of this chart. The CO2 of the air first gets converted into grass. Then the grass gets eaten by the cattle, which is 100% vegan being, by the way, and it turns the grass within a magic process into proteins. Therefore, the entire mass of an animal is generated by the air, and so even the height, the basic raw material of leather, was made from air. After use, when it gets deteriorated or when it biodegrades, according to the law of mass conversion, it turns back again into the exact same amount of CO2 as it derives from, and nothing else. This process is a biocycle, which means the basic raw material of leather is 100% climate neutral. This is a fundamental difference to any synthetic materials. Here we do have a linear process starting from oil, This you can see on the right, and it all gets converted into plastic, which after incineration gets turned and released into additional CO2 in the atmosphere, additional heating up of our planet. This is the opposite of climate neutral. Therefore, I believe it is fair to state, and an important fact, unfortunately widely unknown and too often incorrectly described, that leather in general has a climate neutral raw material base. So in contradiction to synthetic materials, I believe we can mark the raw material base for leather as a sustainable one with a green dot. Secondly, I want to discuss the aspect of chemicals. Why? 30 to 40% of the weight of leather are incorporated or attached chemicals. This is a lot. And so chemicals is an important factor in the leather making process. Without chemicals, you can say there are no leathers. The role of chemicals varies. Yeah? Chemicals are preparing and turning the hide into a durable material leather. This is called tanning. Chemicals are providing the character of the leather. Chemicals are generating the value of leather. And finally, chemicals are giving the technical performance of leather. So it's very important. But coming back to the intro question, do chemicals make the articles less sustainable? Since about 20 years, the chemical industry has focused on a sustainable development process for chemicals to make or keep the chemicals first as natural as possible and second as harmless as possible. Therefore, most of chemicals we use for leather making have even a natural origin, like enzymes, proteins, casein waxes, starch, or they are purely extracts from the nature, like vegetable tanning, cellulose or lignin, or they are minerals or inorganic materials such as talcum or zeolite. And those chemicals are completely harmless in this application. To answer the question from before, I think it is fair to state, no, chemicals are not an issue for sustainability in the leather making, but yes, they can be even a solution to it. So coming back to this slide, how it is possible to ensure that those chemicals, those sustainable non-hazardous chemicals, are used. Here, the leather industry, like the textile sector, by the way, supports the NGO initiative Roadmap to Zero. And they have developed a wide list for sustainable chemicals, the so-called Manufacturing Restricted Substances List, the MRSL. And this MRSL gets updated based on latest science regularly. ZDHC is a platform which ensures the use and even the proper production of these chemicals used in the field of textile and leather. And a tannery which choose to use this chemical portfolio, yes, they are operating safe and responsible. The sourcing list is available to any tanner in the world for free, and each brand can enforce to use it from its supplier. That's why I mark the chemical section also with a green dot as well. These were the chemicals. What about the level of the leather making process, sustainability level? Here are also a lot of misleading information around in public media, I have to say, while the truth about today's industrial manufacturing conditions is very much different. Let's talk about water first. Yes, water is required in the leather making process because leather is produced in big drums in processes similar to a washing machine. If you look on the water footprint, there are huge numbers of water footprints communicated in the media. For example, at waterfootprint.org, it says 17,000 liters of water are required to produce only 1 square meter of leather. Is it fair to say? I would say no, or at least it requires some explanation, because 99% of these 17 cubic meter waters are allocated to the farming industry, and more than 90% of it is just rain or surface water to grow the plants the animal is going to eat. This is going to happen anyway, regardless if an animal hide is converted into leather or not. And to my understanding, it can't be counted as typical production footprint, water production footprint. So the real amount of processed water in a tannery varies between 100 and 250 liter per square meter, depending on how much water-saving technologies a tanner has implemented. In general, I have to say, a tannery is even not consuming water. As shown in this little picture here, a tannery operates in a bypass to a river. The required process water is taken out of the river, just borrowed from the river for the use to produce leather for several days, cleaned afterwards before getting back released into the river again. And if there is an efficient treatment plant and treatment in place, as it should be standard of today's tanneries industry, the discharge effluent is clean, in the ideal case even cleaner than the water which was taken out of the river before. Therefore, from a responsible production point of view, I think we can say, the issue water is not an issue at all, and we can mark this with a green dot. By the way, the denim jeans, for example, to my knowledge, requires more than 1,000 liter per square meter for its production. Yes, leather use a lot of water, but compared to other materials, it's even not worse. Coming to the next aspect, the sustainability aspect, and this is the management of byproducts, an important one, because the leather production of 1 kg of genuine leather generates 2 to 3 kgs of byproducts. This is a lot, and those byproducts are not waste, or shouldn't be waste. They are proteins, which is a highly valuable raw material. The tanning industry, together with the chemical industry, works on many concepts to make use of them as much as possible. It is possible, and those activities are in place. Therefore, I believe byproducts are also not an issue, and we can mark them with a green dot. Next, I want to make another point clear, which is often taken into the disadvantage of leather, the product carbon footprint. This is a KPI which measures mainly the cumulated energy consumption of a process. Here I'm going to a little bit more detail. I'm going to refer to a scientific benchmark study for different consumer good materials done by Jutta Knödler in the year 2011. And I refer to the new EU category rules published last year. In this study, Jutta has compared the cradle-to-grave process, the product carbon footprint for the entire lifespan of the different materials. And starting from the production of chemicals, transportation of intermediates, waste treatment, the use during lifetime, as well as the final disposal. So the whole cradle-to-grave process. As a result of this, step-by-step analysis, it can be shown that the carbon footprint of PU-coated materials is around 60 kg CO2 equivalents per square meter. A cotton material, it's about 19, and a polyester type of woven results in 21 kg CO2 per square meter. In all cases, the same estimate of 8.1 kilogram CO2 for the use during lifetime was used. So if we want to have the real product carbon footprint of the material fabrication, including deterioration, we have to deduct this from this overall value. So how now does this value look compared to leather? Here, even we have, she has analyzed step by step the whole process: chemical production, transportation, tannery operation, wastewater treatment, incineration. And all in all, we come to a value of 17.2 kg of CO2 equivalents per square meter. A big question mark in this PCF discussion, and this is not included here right now, are the boundaries and how much CO2 contribution comes out of the upstream process, the farming of animals. And to get a scientific answer here, I would like to briefly refer to the recent study of the EU, which was done in conjunction with the meat industry. And according to this, 88% of the value of a cow is allocated to the milk and dairy industry, and 12% is allocated to the body. And from those 12%, 96% are allocated to the meat, and 3% to the height. And if we follow this logic and allocate according to a mass balance, 70%, like the byproducts, are allocated to the byproduct, and 30% out of this is allocated to genuine leather. Then only 0.14% of the entire carbon footprint of a cow finally gets allocated to the material leather. This corresponds exactly to 3 kg for the leather, and if we include this into the leather making process, it adds up to 20.2 kg, which is in the same order of magnitude as it is for the other materials, and therefore we can also give a green dot behind this energy consumption. So as a conclusion for this overall process, how can a brand ensure that all these sustainable process operations have been in place for leather he is going to purchase? And in order to ensure all these good practices are in place, the leather industry, together with leading brands, have established an own NGO, the so-called Leather Working Group, which audits all these mentioned parameters: a sustainable chemical management, responsible water use, a low waste byproduct management, and an efficient energy consumption. So the Leather Working Group has developed a measurable table of KPIs per production of each square feet of leather. And if those LWG parameters are achieved, a tannery is certified and rated with a medal. So to answer the question from before, if a brand wants to choose a sustainable leather, it is pretty easy. Just source it from an LWG rated tannery. So finally, I want to close my overview, and I want to come to a real advantage of the material leather, an aspect which in today's world gets more and more important, the biodegradability of a material. Let me explain a little bit more in detail for the discussion. It is important to differentiate between bio-based origin, which means it's an origin, it's renewable, and it is generated by a biological process in nature, and on the other side, a biodegradable raw material, when a material in a reasonable time frame, let's say 100 days, breaks down into natural components which can be taken up by biocycles again. Gets demineralized, we say. And based on this, we can differentiate between 4 sections, as I show in the scheme on the right. First, the synthetic polymers, which are based on fossil source, oil, and not biodegradable. These are plastics such as PVC, polyester, polyurethane materials. Then the industry is in process to develop plastics which can biodegrade. However, they are still based on oil. The third group contains bio-based plastics, which means the material is based on natural sources such as cellulose or enzymes, but cannot biodegrade due to its chemical modification, the polymerization. And finally, the fourth group, a material, covers a true sustainable material, because first it is bio-based and it can biodegrade it. And this is an example is leather, is collagen, and lots of those chemicals which we use to produce a leather, as mentioned before. Based on this scientific categorization, a clear differentiation has to be done between artificial leather, standard plastic, 100% based on oil and not biodegradable. They will end up finally as little fibers in the ocean, and genuine leather, which consists at least to 70 to 90% on the recipe, depending on raw materials, and biodegrades in the environment in a short period of time. It will never, a piece of leather will never end up in an ocean or in the stomach of a whale. And therefore, it is the most sustainable material. To complete the parameter chart, so we can state leather is, even from this aspect of biodegradability, a sustainable material, and we can mark this last KPI again with a green dot. So I'm coming to my last chart. Let me summarize the sustainable leather story. I hope I was clear in my argumentation, saying leather has a climate neutral material base, and it can be done in a safe and audited way, produced in a safe and audited way. Leather chemistry is proven to be safe in use and harmless for environment and human health. And finally, leather is based up at least 70 to 90% on renewable raw materials, which are fully biodegradable. As a conclusion, I believe it is fair to say that the leather industry has successfully managed the process from change from an old handcraft to a modern recycling industry. And in terms of sustainability readiness level and transparency in their supply chain, I think the leather industry is not only better than their image, but even ahead from many, many other industries. And therefore, I think it is fair to conclude the use of leather is the ultimate sustainable choice of material. Thanks for your attention. Hello?
Hello, thank you, Dr. Dietrich. And in the second part of the webinar, we have two speakers from Textile to present. And Textile is a test company and a certification company who conduct textile and leather-related physical and chemical tests on leather, fibers, woven, non-woven, finished products, and more. They are a member of Ocotex, which is a well-known sustainability certificate to implement greater sustainability and product responsibility along the global textile value chain. Now, may I invite Linda, the Group Market Development Manager. And Linda has years of experience in sustainability sector, particularly in uncovering the environmental hotspot along the supply chain. And Linda, the product manager, group product manager, is Textile's technical expert with a background of several years working in the leather and fur manufacturing industry. She is professional with topics in sustainability, animal welfare, and durability. So hello, Miriam and Linda, can you see us? Yeah, Miriam, we cannot hear you.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today. We're looking forward to your presentation. Are you ready to share with us?
Yes, we definitely are.
So you can share your screen.
Lovely. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. So bear with me while I start sharing my screen.
There's a green button. Yeah, we can see it.
Lovely.
Great.
So, yes, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and it was really interesting to already hear Dr. Dietmeier about his part on how we can present the sustainable side of leather. Now ours hopefully complements his in the way that we have the pleasure to be here today to look at a high quality product of leather and how it can present itself as a credible and sustainable alternative to vegan leather, and how Ocotex can support you in this path. Now, before delving into the topic, I would like to very briefly present who or what Ocotex is. Most of you have already heard of Ocotex, so I really don't want to put too much time into the topic, but just put some numbers to the name. Ocotex was founded in 1992 and consists of 18 research institutes, one of which is Textile, to which Miriam and me belong to. The branches are based in over 60 countries, and to date we are happy to report that we have issued over 200,000 certificates and so helped over 14,000 businesses worldwide to become more sustainable. So the reason for our existence can be simply and clearly put in one sentence. We want to enable both consumers and US companies to make responsible decisions to protect our planet. And we believe that now, more so than ever, is a time to change our mindset towards making more responsible decisions. Here we go. So, and why do we think that's the case? Well, let's look at how the leather industry makes the headlines. And as we can see here on the slide, its credibility is questioned in comparison to vegan leather. And the question is even raised if one should switch altogether to vegan leather. But when we go on, these headlines stand in stark contrast to the leather goods still being highly popular. And compound annual growth rate of 5% for the leather goods is predicted until 2023, and even 6% for the handbags alone. So question is, how can we make the most of these at first glance conflicting demands? The vegan leather hype on the one side, and at the same time the clear popularity of leather. I think the answer lies in looking at the big picture and to invest in the future. And I think this picture really nicely illustrates the wave which is hitting us now, which we all know is COVID, unfortunately and sadly, but others which are much more impactful are following closely after. So as you can see, climate change is predicted to be a much higher wave, which as such also provides the answer to our previous question. If the leather industry can adjust sustainability in the right way, then consumers will be even more inclined to purchase leather products, and the industry will stay abreast of the changes. So, there are already many initiatives which focus on sustainability in one way or another. And these are just a few of the most prominent ones which Oekotex takes into consideration when it updates its standards on a yearly basis. So we have ZDHC, as you may know well, and we'll go into that. I already saw a question in the chat box whether Oekotex is compliant with ZDHC. We'll go into that right after. Then of course we all know Greenpeace, and then for the leather industry and the Leather Working Group and Textile Exchange Responsible Leather Roundtable are of course of great interest. So we do make a big effort in making sure that our standards and certifications are not an isolated, capsulated site in itself, but we do make sure that we stay abreast of the changes and that we are in line in what the industry wants and how the sustainability efforts in the market develop. So I've talked now a lot about the industry and what the consumer wants, and I think this picture really leads over nicely to the part which I'd like to hand over then to Miriam, is what we actually do and how we try to support you as both customers on the one hand side and of course consumers of leather goods on the other hand side. So we have in this picture, as you can see, we start at the very beginning with the input control, where we look at the chemicals coming into the factory, that they are sustainable. There we cover that with Eco Passport. Then we look at the process, at how it's produced. There we have the certification of STEP. And then we want to make sure that the finished goods, so the leather goods, are also sustainable and safe to wear, so safe from harmful substances, where we then have the tag of the leather standard. So with this, I'd like to hand over to Miriam, who will guide you through the different stages and show you how Oekotex can support you in making these more sustainable.
So perfect. Thank you very much, Linda, for heading over the presentation to me. So at the beginning, I would like to start with the input control. We all know leather requires a lot of chemicals throughout its production process, from the raw hide to the finished leather material. So it is key to control what kind of chemicals, colorants, or auxiliaries are put in the production process at the very beginning. As Mr. Teckmeyer already mentioned in his presentation, there have been some promising development in regard to sustainable leather chemicals. ZTHC published their whitelist. Lanxess was rated as a supplier of sustainable leather chemicals by ZTHC. TFL cooperates for sustainable leather chemicals, just to mention the recent changes for the better. The big companies the big companies in the industry are already aware of the importance of input control and the regulation of substances. So they strive for safe chemicals and chemical input, which will influence the market now and in the future. So to control your input, you have 3 different stages to certify chemicals, colorants, and auxiliaries to show they can be used in a sustainable leather production optimized for human ecology. So stage 1. This includes cost number screening and comparison with the EcoPassport RSL, which is in line with ZTHC MRSL and takes into consideration REACH, Prop 65, and many more international regulations, which we saw before on Linda's slide. Then stage 2. Next to cost number screening, also an analytical laboratory test is carried out in a second step. This should ensure that the certified chemicals can be used in a sustainable production of human ecological optimized textiles and leather articles. And the last stage, stage 3. Working conditions, environmental management, and safety are checked during an on-site visit. This selection of this audit with assessment is optional for the applicant, but is required to be in conformance with ZTHC Level 3. So, following the certification process, you will get an official screening report besides the certificate, which can be a useful marketing tool. On this slide, you see an example of a screening report with relevant informations. And here is also an example of the certificate of the left side, which you will get if you pass the certification process. So, now that we covered input control, I would like to follow up with the process control. In the past years, and also more recently, child labor, unfair working conditions, or environmental pollution in the leather industry met headlines. So due to such news, consumers were made aware of those circumstances and demand for sustainable processes and social responsibility even more. Process control, according to STEP, can be applied in all leather production process, from beam house to leather logistics. The production facilities are scored in 6 different models, which you can see here on the left side. It is environmental management, management of chemicals, quality management, occupational health and safety, social responsibility, and also environmental performance. according to a comprehensive questionnaire with a rating on 3 levels. Of course, not everyone is eligible for a STEP certification, regardless of the level. On this slide, there are just a few of the exclusion criteria. So, for example, when there is no inventory of used chemicals or child labor, this would be an exclusion criteria. But in the following, I would like to look at 3 of the modules a little bit closer. It is environmental management, and social responsibility as well. To address the ecological sustainability in the production process, good environmental performance and environmental management are especially important to be implemented. Key areas of these 2 modules are waste management, detailed process control, safe storage of chemicals, implementing standards like the ISO 14001, and also environmental targets, to just name a few. So, social responsibility is an important part of sustainability and has gained more weight in the past years. Employees need to be treated fairly, and I think it is in our responsibility to make sure UN and ILO conditions, fair wages, the control of child labor, and also implementing standards like the SA 8000 are considered and implemented. So, for you to have a better picture of what we are talking about, we have listed 3 questions which you would have to answer. For example, do you take precautions to avoid formation of chromium-6? Or is wastewater treatment and disposal of effluents and sludge described in a management system and or in a policy? Or do you have a system to prevent recruitment of child labor? I guess it goes without saying that the answers to these questions have to be backed up with a system report and have to be verified with an audit to see that they ring through in real life. Yeah, so to close the loop of a sustainable leather production, an additional product control is highly recommended to offer a safe product in the end. Next to headlines about chemical input or working conditions, also product-related headlines are present and will influence the future of the leather industry. This shift needs to be taken seriously as already leading customers demand for product safety in the whole supply chain, and not only in ready-made articles but also in semi-finished products. This standard, the leather standard, has a modular structure. As you can see here on this slide, the standard allows to certify leather items at any process stage, from semi-finished leathers to the ready-made leather article. This offers you a supplementation to earn internal product quality systems. In addition, the leather standard is also separated in 4 product classes. We have product class 1, which is for articles for babies up to 3 years, for example, a baby sheepskin. Then we have product class 2, which is for articles with direct skin contact, for example, shoes. And then we have product class 3, for articles without direct skin contact, for example, leather belts. And product class 4 is for decoration material, for example, a nice leather couch. So, yeah, sorry, we can say, just to talk about again from the product classes, we can say the closer the skin contact and the younger the user of the product, the stricter are the requirements and limit values. And on this slide, you see a section of the official standard with examples of different limit values per product class. For instance, copper is accepted up to 50 milligram per kilogram in product class 2 to 4, but in product class 1, which is relevant for baby articles, only the half limit value of 25 milligram per kilogram is accepted. Also, when it comes to process preservatives, the limit values are way more stricter in product class 1 than in product class 2 to 4, as babies are the most sensitive human being, and it is especially important to protect them. The official standard is accessible for everyone on the Testex or also on the official Ecotex website if you want to have a closer look about the limit values. An important role of standards is also to update the requirements in accordance of new legal regulations, industry initiatives, or also the market demand. That's why our test criteria are updated on an annual basis. So, for example, or for instance, for 2020, several chemicals were added and to collect testing data and put them under observation, such as 2 new VOCs, which are used as solvents and are potentially harmful, but not legally banned. Yeah, so that's more about the technical part or the standards. I now want to hand over the presentation back to Linda, and thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Miriam, for this interesting insight into our different certifications for every stage of production. As this is quite a lot of information at once, I would like to end our webinar, our presentation, with a brief overview over the most compelling benefits that our certification may offer the leather industry. So we have 5 of those. To just focus on the most important ones. So in a nutshell, as we saw in our certifications, are neither restricted to a specific type nor stage of operation, and both build on as well as complement each other. While Ecotex has its beginning in the textile industry, we understood that we have to connect to our expertise and develop our certifications laterally, as brands and retailers have products consisting of both leather and textiles, so both materials. Last but not least, it allows you to showcase your sustainability commitments, which brings us back to the title of this presentation, as to how leather can be a credible alternative to vegan leather. So I would like to end our presentation with a quote of a millennial, the largest and most demanding consumer group of our time. Certification is important because I can tell by looking at tags and other labels if the product I buy are as good as they claim to be. So with that, thank you very much for your interest, your attention, and thank you also to APLF for this opportunity to share our view, and to Lanxess for their view on sustainability. Now I would like to open up the stage to you, participants, with any questions. So
yes, yeah, thank you, Linda, for your presentation. And yeah, we got some questions. And yes, maybe hello, Dr. Dietrich. So
yeah, now I'm back again.
Yeah, so we got some question. We due to the time limit, we cannot answer it all in this live presentation, but we will follow up after the webinar. So the first question is about the quality of water. Because during the tanning process, because we can use some chemical, and our attendee is concerned about, do we have any standard or scientific proof for the water after the tanning process before we discharge to the farming industry or recycle other purpose? Do we have any standard on the quality of the water?
First of all, there are many legal requirements from region to region. Yeah, so in most parts of the world, it is regulated anyhow locally by law. On the other hand, the IULTCS, that is a union of international union for leather technologists and chemist societies. You can go to the webpage iultcs.org, and there in the environmental section there are minimum environmental standards defined, and but also the ZDHC is not only checking the chemicals which are used, they also now do check the released water and the quality of the released water. There was another question with a concern of water and the 100 to 250 liters I mentioned. Is this processed water? Yes, this is a processed water, and it is not recycled water. And the reason, because there is a range between 100 and 250, is that that there could be some portion of water be recycled, and then you are on the lower end. And if you do not recycle, then you are at the upper end. And this recycling, of course, costs money, costs energy and technologies, and therefore it is important in areas where water is scary, where the water amount is not big. But there are many areas, for example, if you go to Scotland or even here in Germany, yeah, we have enough water. Actually, we have too much water when it's raining period, and there is no reason to spend energy and money to minimize, to go, let's say, less than 100 liter per square meter. Yeah, if we use 200, why not? You know, it's not an ecological problem. We have to make sure, or each tannery has to make sure, that it cleans the water afterwards. I mean, that is before it releases it, and there are technologies in place. It's not magic. It is possible to do, and yeah, it's a matter of will, that the tannery wants to establish those tanneries or not.
Okay. Okay, so the second question is about the sustainability index. The attendees mentioned that heat specific is a heat index. Why the leather always get a higher score than the synthetic material? How we do the justification to have this kind of statement?
Is it a question to me?
I think so.
And I haven't understood the question right. Why leather gets the highest scores for?
Yeah, the heat index.
Oh, the heat index.
Yeah, the sustainability index. Why?
Of SAC?
HIGG, heat index.
Yeah. Okay.
HIG index.
Yes. Okay, but maybe his question is about why, yeah, in the presentation, sometimes we will say the leather is a sustainable material, and sometimes we got a higher score in some sustainability index. So, and then the synthetic material, and yeah, what is your opinion, and yeah, how is justification this statement?
I can't answer this in detail. I'm not too much familiar with the HIG index. I know that there it is. And what I can say is, and what I said in the beginning, at the first part, that this climate neutral raw material base, that is something, for example, which is not reflected in many assessments. Yeah, they always say the cattle is releasing methane. Yes, that is right, and therefore it's a problem for the leather and meat industry. But this is only one portion of the equation, yeah. And the true measurement is if you take the other portion of the equation, that all the mass of an animal is generated out of CO2 in the air, yeah. It's somehow climate neutral. And I don't know the Higg index and which index, but this I know there are many assessments which for me are scientifically not right, yeah, and because they don't reflect the whole picture, and yeah, I don't know how leather comes out in comparison to textile in the Higg index. To be honest, I'm not the right person to ask to.
Okay.
Maybe you, Linda, or Miriam, you can answer this.
I mean, I don't know the Higg index questions in detail, but it goes similar to the STEP assessment. So there I wouldn't say, I mean, I'm surprised to say that they just generally rate leather worse than textile production. I would rather turn the question around to whether, because they have standardized questions, to see whether certain factories may not fulfill the same level. So I wouldn't say, I'm very surprised if they would just rate leather worse. I mean, we would have to look in detail whether the question, because Higg index also started in the textile industry, if the questions, as you just mentioned, if the questions, the way they are phrased, are not the right ones to also cover the leather industry, that they don't take enough credit into what is important in the leather industry.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's difficult to say if it's a totally different company and very detailed question.
Yeah, maybe we can forward the question to you, and then maybe you can have another answer. So maybe next question is any tips to select sustainable chemical?
And what is the question? I'm sorry.
Any tips to select sustainable chemical?
Oh.
Maybe the how to select the sustainable chemical. Do you have any?
I thought I have addressed this. You're right. There are sustainable chemicals, and there are chemicals which are not, let's say, state of the art, and they are also commercially available in the market. And the tanner now has to choose what kind of chemicals he is going to use. Mm-hmm. If he only takes the cheapest one, then for sure he will not always get the most sustainable ones. The ZDHC has or is in process to establish a white list for chemicals. Yeah, and these chemicals are then approved. And by the way, Oekotex is one of the possible NGOs who are going to approve the chemical suppliers in their quality of production, but also in the composition of the chemicals, if they are in line with this ZDHC restricted substances list or not. So in this white list, there are not these chemical names, there are the brand names, yeah, from the chemicals, how a tanner can buy this. So he can go into the internet on the ZDHC gateway, and there is a list of chemicals which are sustainable because they are proven by ZDHC and by the third parties like Oekotex or other companies who are auditing then the chemical suppliers that they are in line with the ZDHC requirements. And this, I would say, are sustainable chemicals.
Okay. Linda, do you have any?
No, I would have answered in the same way. Yes, thank you very much. Nothing more to add there. I think that's. I think ZDHC has made a great effort there, and it's great that you're now also venturing into the leather industry.
And this list is available to everyone in the world by internet.
Okay. Okay, maybe, yeah, the next question is about the carbon footprint, because normally the people will say that the farming industry, the meat industry is create a lot of carbon footprint, but leather is the byproduct of the meat industry. So how we can say, what is your opinions, and how we can still say leather is a sustainable product because it's byproduct of meat industry.
Yeah, maybe I was not 100% clear in that what I'm saying. I try to answer this in my presentation. It's again something I have to say that product carbon footprint is a good KPI. It's the only KPI how to measure the chemical performance or the energy consumption of a manufacturing process. That is fine. Yeah. But in all these natural products which have a natural source, if it is paper or if it are certain oils or if it is leather, yeah, they have the same problem where to limit the boundaries to measure this. Yeah, because it is very difficult to define boundaries there, and therefore it is there are different standards which are somehow not updated anymore, or which are not including the whole picture and so on. So once a product comes from a natural source, it is very difficult to define really a carbon footprint for the overall cradle-to-grave process, because it's very difficult to define what from the nature you allocate in and what not. Yeah, and as I said in my presentation, like the water footprint, it makes it more clear. Yeah, the rainwater is required to grow the grass, what the animal is eating and converting into the height. So where do you limit now the water footprint? Yeah, and this is the same with the energy consumption. And I try to make it clear that leather in principle is a climate neutral material in my first part of my presentation, and even this needs to be reflected from my perspective in a true carbon footprint discussion. Carbon footprint for me is the energy which a process requires to produce the material. This is the KPI, and here leather is not better, not worse than any other material which is in competition.
Yeah, if I may just add there, I thought you really presented that well, because there's all my background was in the LCA, and there the scientific discussion of allocation at the point of substitution, or is it do we take the cut-off system model, is still a very big debate with leather, and we had the same debate years ago with paper. So you can take the same analogy with paper. So recycled paper, if you wouldn't use a cut-off system model, recycled paper would actually have a higher carbon footprint, because you start with taking down the tree and using the process to produce the first paper, and then recycling it, and then creating the recycled paper. So taking this laterally, the analogy to the meat production and leather, why does leather have to be allocated to the whole meat production? Just to emphasize what Dr. Tetmeier said there. I think that's an important discussion and thought process to be made.
It's very difficult really to define the right values, and you have to be very careful if you see a number, to punish or to blame any material, because it's very difficult.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the testing and the certification information is very useful for our audience because they have a lot of concern. Thank you very much again. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.